Dave Cooper Live, we connect the industry leaders in the architectural, engineering, and construction space with the people, the products, and the processes to help them build it better. All right. What if the future of construction wasn't steel or concrete, but wood? Today on Dave Cooper Live, we're diving into the bold vision with Thomas Mende, Chief Sales Officer of Binderholz right here in Atlanta. Binderholz has gone from a single sawmill in 1950 Austria to one of the most advanced mass timber producers in the world. And they're not just making products, they're rethinking how we use every fiber of the tree for zero waste and high performance futures. Thomas brings us inside the world of solid wood innovation, from massive structural CLT panels to micro scale applications, and explains how beauty, strength, and sustainability are no longer trade-offs. You want to stick around, because what we're about to show you just might change the way you think about wood-based construction. But before we get into any or all of that, we got to give a big shout out to some of our supporting members, starting with Cobalt Creed. They service builders, developers, prefab home builders, and manufacturers, allowing them to achieve the highest levels of comfort, indoor air quality, and low energy costs with their HVAC system installed for their projects and their customers. Their approach is simple. By using their proprietary small duct, high-velocity central heating and cooling system. If you want to learn more, go to cobaltcreed.com. Now, a few words from these sponsors, and then we're going to get right into this show. Brought to you by Greatech, developers of the complete light gauge steel and wood framing software for Revit StruxSoft. Off-site, modular, or prefabricated, StruxSoft Framer turns Revit into a powerful manufacturing tool, automating every step of the DFMA process from design to final delivery. StruxSoft doesn't just work with Revit, it transforms it. Jumpstart your designs at StruxSoftSolutions.com. Howick Ltd. has a long history of innovation in cold form steel manufacturing and producing innovative precision roll forming technology for customers throughout the United States and the world. Check out their machine buyer's guide for off-site modular construction or fast build construction with light steel for framing. Go to their website, howickltd.com. All right, a big thank you to all of our supporting members, and to all of the supporting members you're seeing going across the bottom of our screen there. We can't do any or all of this without the support of all of you out there. We are keeping it live, we are keeping it real, and we are keeping it unedited, so you get the real deal on what's happening in the world of technology, wood, sustainability, and the future for all of us and our kids. So without further ado, why don't we bring Thomas on to the show? Thomas, how are you, my friend?
Great. Thanks so much. Welcome.
Thomas, thank you for taking time out of your busy day. I mean, you're working with one of the largest timber producers in the world. It's been around a long time, so I'm super excited to have you on the show and get into this. But before we do this, Thomas, we want to know everything about you from the moment you were born to this very moment in time. Do not leave out any of the good stuff from the hospital, or we're going to have a family member on, and I'm sure it could get quite embarrassing. But you only have about a minute and a half to do it. The floor is yours.
Yeah, don't worry about it. I was born in Wiesbaden, Germany, also the hometown of John McEnroe, for tennis fans among you. And I grew up next to an American housing project for military. Started to play tennis, and 18 years later, I was able to come to the United States to play tennis for Coastal Carolina College. Back then it was a college, now it's a university. And I was able to graduate quite quickly, and then I was looking for a job. I wanted to be in marketing on Madison Avenue, and quickly found out in 1990 there were not a lot of jobs around, but there was this one company in the lumber business. It was called New South Company, and they were exporting lumber to Europe, and they gave me a shot, and I started as a marketing manager for them. Later I started the international business. And that's kind of like the trend of my career a little bit. It started with international exports to more to Europe, but also to Asia. Continued on with importing from South America. Later on, I started then importing from Europe, and I started working for the first, for a large German-based company called Klausner. And we became a big importer in the US. I also sold that product in Japan and Australia, and later on in the Middle East, and in India and in China. And so it just lumber became my career. And the company left the company in 2019 to start Binderholz here in the US. So the US representation office, we handle all the import sales from North and South America for North and South America, but we also bought 2 sawmills, as we'll see in a minute, and exporting that. But personally, I'm married. I have 2 adult kids, and unfortunately, I was not able to get them in the lumber business, quite sadly. So they have a lawyer and a person that works for marketing for a ski resort, but not in lumber.
Well, but you've been in the lumber business for a long time. You're out of Atlanta. Why did you guys choose Atlanta to kind of be the ground zero for what you're doing here?
Well, luckily I was living here, so that was an easy decision. But of course, the Atlanta airport is something unmatched anywhere in the United States. I mean, we have connections to anywhere in the world, direct connections. And the fun part when traveling within the United States, it's easy to fly in the morning and fly back in the evening. And that's just a fun thing. And big quality of life improvement,
For sure. So you're gonna walk us through an entire in fact, 3 different presentations almost, kind of showing everything that you guys are currently doing at Binderholz and what you're working on here in the United States. So why don't we hop into the presentation and let's see what it's all about and where you're headed with this.
Great. Yeah, great. So I'm looking for my fast forward buttons here.
Yeah, no problem.
I don't see them at the moment.
That'll be on your share screen.
Okay, here we go. So sorry. So we have the company, as you mentioned, was started in the 1950s. Now this is the original sawmill, quite small. We now have more than 6,300 employees, more than 60 different locations in all these different countries. So headquartered in Austria, in Fügen, but Germany, Great Britain, Latvia, Finland, and the US is where we have operations. It is a family company. I think that's very important. So the original founder is on the left. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. But in the executive boards are the children and the children's. So it's definitely a company that has family-based values. Just a quick overview of our locations. in the UK is actually our biggest market now. So there's quite an interesting segment. But what we cover, and I think that's the important part, we cover anything from the beginning to the end in a way. So everything in solid wood is our motto, and that includes and starts with a tree nursery business that we have in the UK. We forest manage in the UK and Europe. And then we have all the different lumber productions. We go deeper into the mass timber and the construction sites, and then also into biofuels and innovative products for the byproducts. And this is part of the zero waste philosophy that you mentioned earlier. So the company is really looking and saying, what in every step of the way, what can we do to create a zero waste process? The 50 million seedlings that we grow in the UK are enough to would be enough to supply all of our sawmill operations. Of course, they're all in the UK, so they're not necessarily in Germany. And in terms of lumber production, we're probably about number 5 in the world. But what makes us different is that we value add a lot of the basic raw material lumber that we produce in the sawmills, and that is within the CLT space, glue laminated beams, and solid wood panels, which we mainly refer to as micro CLT. We'll be talking about that in more detail a little bit later. So value added, going further down, finding the right processes and products, that's really in our basic method. What we're kind of known for in the mass timber industry are big, large projects that are, to me, the marquee projects really all around the world. Here in the US, the first really big projects, aside from one in Arkansas, was this Intro Cleveland project. And this is the future of constructions as we view it with wood, when the carbon sequestration benefits that wood provides, along with a really pleasant atmosphere to live in. I think this is often not talked about, but when you are surrounded by wood, it provides a much, much better living environment. I'm going to show you a video now how fast this was built, and I will give you the next big clue of why mass timber has such a big following. And as you watch this video, you will notice that the majority of the work starts in the very beginning, in the basic foundation and elevator shafts. And then there are 2 parts to this building, one on the right that as it builds, and watch how quickly the left side builds after a little bit of experience was gained. So this is why mass timber also has a big fan base. That is the speed of construction and the ease with which it's put together. Sorry, I went too far. As a customer once said to me, he said, this is like building a piece of IKEA furniture. You provide all the parts, they're all numbered. You provide all the hardware, it's all numbered. And all I have to make sure is to put the pieces together and make sure that they're tightly secured. And that's how the mass timber really has taken off. What I wanted to show you next is some of the more unique structures that Binderholz has worked on in the past and is still working on. This is a parking garage in Sweden. So parking garages would not be the first thing that comes to mind when I would think of mass timber construction. So it's a quick way and beautiful way to build a parking structure. On top, a solar panel array with covered parking at the very top. So very unique little building. The most recent large marquee projects, I would say, is the Under Armour building in Baltimore. That is now complete. The fascinating thing about this building is that it only contains 1 steel beam supporting a large staircase. So this is wood, and wood again, and then on the outside, some glass. Just a very unique and beautiful facility when you visit. So it's open to the public with a store, just a beautiful array.
Wow.
The future is also, the future is also warehouses and data centers. So this is where mass timber, just like a tilt-up concrete wall, can quickly be installed and built. In this case, you'll see a lot of some of the glulam beams and rafters that are being used in addition to that. And this is a big building. If you ever fly to Luxembourg, not on everybody's tourist destination, this is a building adjacent to the Luxembourg airport, a business center, and it's the largest volumetric use of mass timber products, glulam beams and CLT, probably in the world now, in terms of just the volume that it used. So just a really fantastic, unique building as it goes forward. In the US, we're starting now to see more and more single family uses. This is not in the US, but this is a European building. And for everybody that's ever considered mass timber for a single family use, just consider the speed of construction. My neighborhood is quite built up, and we built a lot of homes, but not at this speed. So it's a nice little time-lapse video of a 2-day construction for a single family home.
2 days.
2 days.
So you're doing, is the floor concrete?
Yeah, it's the concrete base, but then the erection is just 2 days.
Second floor is CLT?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So you guys do the roof trusses as well out of CLT, or are they roof panels?
Roof panels. In this case, it's a flat roof.
Okay.
So it's a quite quick assembly.
Now, are those solid CLT panels, or are they sandwiching any insulation? How does it work?
Yeah, actually, when you look on the outside, I can stop it for a minute.
Yeah.
So on the outside, you can actually see this is not a CLT panel. There's insulation, wood insulation that's been attached to it.
Okay.
Yeah. And this, but you see the rim boards and all that. That is glulam product. This is the 2-day quick installation. This to me is where the future really should be for mass timber, which is really in the smaller projects. And when we think about the European model, the volume is really going into the smaller projects, not in these big grand marquee buildings. And for that, we need, of course, more and more people that have CNC machines that can do the engineering, that are familiar with it. But that's a little bit where the industry is heading, should be heading, if you want to really expand it at a much, much faster pace.
Thomas, let me ask you about those side walls again. Sorry to get stuck on that.
Yeah, no, sure.
So the side walls, an actual timber frame CLT product that you can still put the insulation in. So it's almost like true 2x4s, 2x6s.
Yeah, of course. As you can see, this is if you can see, this is in a mountain area, so it's quite cold. Wood, of course, is a natural insulator. So for many areas, the wooden wall will suffice as an insulation. In this case, there's wooden panels of wood fiber insulation that are being attached to the outside. Yeah, and these are, so it's not that it's a 2x6 wall and we put the insulation between the 2x6s. It's a massive CLT wall that then on the outside gets an additional layer of wood insulation.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so this would be the end of the first set of slides. Just to give you a quick introduction over what we're doing, and now we would go to this second layer.
There you go.
Great. So this is our next project, which is existing now. It's developed quite well. I think we have a great order file for the projects now. This we call B Solution, and it's really designed for the quick construction of apartment buildings. The basic idea being there are certain standard components, let's call this the Lego kit, that you figure out how to assemble and you can rearrange these components to create buildings very quickly. We have a special website and group for that will help developers put these together and also get a quote extremely fast. So you can choose a set of external wall facades or internal wall things that you can basically select how you would want it. The key to it, or one of the big keys, is the so-called B-box. This is a bathroom box completely pre-assembled, including all the electric wiring and all the plumbing. It's included, and there's a multiple set of different sizes for it. For example, suitable for wheelchairs. They stack on top of each other in the apartment building or high-rise. The shafts are integrated, so they automatically click into each other. Fire protection is included. All the electrical panels come in the set. And
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
You said the shafts connect. Are you telling me that the plumbing and lines, when you set one bath pod on top of the other bath pod, they line up and connect? And
That's
do
correct.
they seal? Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, you can see that in the slide really well. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, think about the time and the labor that saves a plumber or electrician or whoever, whatever the stack's going to be, all the way up.
That's correct. And because it's all pre-assembled, it's also a certain quality aspect to it as well, that you don't have any issues, that nobody forgets to do this or that. And so
Right.
it's a pre-assembled project that provides a very fast quality. So then there's some choices for windows, for example, sun protection. There's a balcony option. So everything is fully digitalized with a digital twin. And this is a view into the factory. So there's the CLT panels that have been pre-routed or CNC'd for all the openings that are required. And when you look closely into these panels, they already have the drywall attached, if that's what's required for the internal wall bearing. All the exterior, everything is already included. This is a look into the B-box during the assembly. And it's all shipped then in these special trailers on job site. You can see there's some straps to it, so they'll be lifted up into this trailer will be lifted onto the job site and stays on the job site. And then the individual components can be arranged. So this is the project Bricks-Leg. It's one of the examples. This was the architectural rendering and detailed drawing. So even in this case, even the stair shaft was a CLT shaft. And here's the exterior facade. You can see it here, quite pretty. And the V-box as it's being set into the building from the top.
Where's the factory for the B boxes?
So this is in Hallein, which is just south of Salzburg, in a very beautiful city in the world, one of the most beautiful cities in the world. It's a converted MDF factory, so it's a great factory to visit. This is the final project once it was completed. Actually looks like the original project drawing. So yeah, This is something very unique. I think a lot of people are in the US are trying to get to this point, and at least in Europe we're quite successful now in this project with the B solution. It's definitely the right way forward to build multifamily homes extremely fast, so on job sites. So the total time of construction is ridiculously low.
I mean, absolutely, especially with the B pods that you guys are, doing, and if they're interconnecting and locking. Are these all pre-approved for the United States?
Yeah, so that we cannot do the United States. We can take some of these wall assemblies, and we take the wall assemblies and we can attach some things to it for shipment to the United States. So kind of like an in-between set of where we are, but you can't really ship, let's say, from Europe to the United States, something with windows in it. That's very difficult to protect. So it would take somebody eventually in the United States to use the components and do something similar for us.
Sure. And in the world, what is your biggest market? I know UK is a really big market, but if we're looking, with the B pods and where you're using it, where's the biggest market for that right now?
Yeah, that still stays in central Germany and Austria. So in that we call it the DACH region for the German abbreviations of the countries, Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. Yeah. And so these are still the main markets. But outside that, for our mass timber business overall, the US is actually the second largest market in the world now. So,
it is.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's growing unbelievably fast from West Coast to East Coast. So would you say that the US market is one of the fastest growing markets in the world?
Yeah, for sure, particularly for large buildings. I think it's still one of the major aspects here that we have to live with in a way. It's always big projects. Mm-hmm. It's multi-story buildings. It's big commercial projects or schools. Not so much individual homes yet, but I can definitely see the trend. The trend is heading towards ADUs. It's heading towards single-family homes. Whether or not that's cabins or more value-added, high-end products. Multi-million-dollar homes that replace concrete. And this is really where this is heading.
Yeah, earlier you were talking about the kit of parts that developers and architects, designers could work with you guys to come up. So this kit of part to actual building and construction using mass timber, is it for single family? Is it for commercial? Walk us through what that is, and can we do that here in the United States?
Yeah, I would say all mass timber buildings are really kits.
Yeah,
they're kits that they have hardware, they have the panels and the glulam beams, but they all put together with specialized hardware. And that's why I mentioned the IKEA furniture was mentioned to me on a job site once, and I think this was the best explanation anybody could have ever done. It's not Lincoln Homes, it's IKEA furniture that just in a large scale. And so that would be whether that's a single family home or commercial. It's always the same principle. The engineering that's being done, of course, that's the more elaborate part of mass timber. You have to really understand how these things fit together. You have to understand the buildings well. We're doing this mass timber business for over 30 years now. And I would say there's nobody with more experience around the world and more projects around the world than Binderholz that has the experience to understand how things have to hang together, connect together, and what you can and cannot do with mass timber.
Yeah, for sure. What's kind of been the biggest, barrier to entry for the U.S. market? It doesn't sound like it's on the mass timber commercial space. It sounds like it's more on the residential side of it.
Yeah, I think that's not a barrier of entry for the United States. I think this is where the market has the most room to grow. Mm-hmm. And eventually it will. Of course, it will not be with giant panels that were difficult to handle, but our guess will be that'll be the smaller size panel. We have a 4-foot wide panel that kind of broke that mold in Europe. Yeah. That retailers and distributors that would be this traditional lumber distribution channels that they would put into their yards and could do the engineering from there, just like they do truss engineering today or engineered wood products engineering. And they would have a CNC and be able to deliver it to the job site directly or through their retail partner. And I think this is where the future needs to be in this industry.
Let's talk about cost, right? That's something that always comes up in every project, whether it's a multifamily, commercial build, or residential. How are you seeing this being competitive with traditional construction?
Yeah, I think the challenge is always what do you compare and when do you compare it? If you compare the wall itself, the wall component and only the wall component, mass timber is more expensive. When you look at the total construction costs, the foundation savings, the time savings that you have, the limited amount of trucks that you need to get to the job site. So when you take the overall picture of mass timber construction, then I think you will be very competitive or cheaper. So there's always studies being done. but they are hard to compare because you hardly ever have a side-by-side building where you will build one with the other and design the same building and run it parallel. But in general, people that have built with mass timber will continue to build with mass timber, and I think that's the main endorsement that they can give it. That cost maybe one side, overall construction cost, time savings that provide a faster cash flow. Those are the things that in the end will, and maybe a higher cash flow because of the environment that you built. So this is, I think, the other important part, particularly in the office environment, is a big part of leasing rates that are significantly higher because it's a nice environment to work in. So these are all factors that need to be considered.
There are so many studies done on mass timber being used in offices and universities. And if you go to the universities out there, you'll see a lot of buildings are being done with mass timber because of the environment, the work that people get done, the creativeness that people think of. They're more relaxed. It's more warm. It's inviting to be in. The studies are actually showing that there is more productivity done in a mass timber building than a concrete and steel building every day, all day.
Yeah, I just attended a competitors buildings owner's presentation, and he spoke about that. He spoke more about that aspect than about anything else. And about the biophilic aspects that there's actually implications for your health that these type of buildings provide. And I would say it's very simple. I've never seen anybody hug a concrete column or a steel column. But when you build these mass timber buildings and you have these beautiful columns of mass timber of wood, I have seen it where people just came on and gave it a big hug, and just enjoyed being next to that, what used to be a tree,
Yeah.
And it's really quite amazing. It's a beautiful environment. I hate that this building doesn't have it. So we've been looking for a mass timber building to move into in Atlanta, so we could be better in a better place. Yeah.
Well, who knows, man? As it takes off, you might just build your own, right? That's the other side of this.
Could always be. Yeah.
I would imagine, my question, I guess, on top of this, you guys said that you did Under Armour's building, and Under Armour obviously sponsors world-class athletes, and they're coming in and out of that building all the time. Was the, biophilic properties, was that part of that conversations with them?
I think that was the initial intent for Under Armour, to really build in a carbon neutral way. I think this is always for big companies, that is usually a first start, and then they realize how beautiful these buildings are. There's a number, Adidas, Facebook, there's so many big companies in the world now that have Walmart, of course, that have built with mass timber, and they're realizing that particularly in today's environment, you do need to provide a better atmosphere in your office buildings and a healthy atmosphere. And I think that's part of maintaining employees, is part of keeping employees in the office or making them want to be in the office.
Yeah. I mean, you're giving back to them, right? Because without the team members, we're not getting anything done.
Exactly.
The way I see it anyhow. So let's, and I'm going to get back to the soapbox of how you come up the cost, because I agree with you, but resilience, fire, storms of the century, all of the things that we see happening around the world right now. I think for those that are watching this that aren't familiar with mass timber, you might be surprised to hear the comments on fire and storms of the century that are out there. Tell us a little bit about how it holds up.
Yeah, so I just posted on my LinkedIn last week what I called the best endorsement on fire rating, because we're building in Austria for the volunteer fire department a nice new building. So they decided to go with mass timber. They understand that mass timber is extremely, I would call it fire resistant, just by the thickness of the product. And the easiest way to explain it, when you start a fire, you start it with small pieces of wood and kindling. Yeah. You don't start it with a giant log that you put some fire to it. So even if the fire is extreme, you have a hard time to start a big fire that way. And so the charring of the mass timber panel actually somewhat insulates it, and the thickness of it insulates it from that fire damage. one thing that I never thought about it, but learned about 5 years ago is that firefighters will actually understand that a wooden building, if it came to a collapse, would actually give you notice. They could actually hear the cracking of wood. A
Right.
steel or concrete building doesn't do that. It will collapse on them immediately. And I think this is an important aspect. Here's a product that intuitively may not seem that great for fire performance, but actually has a better one and a better safety record.
Yeah, 100%. And for those of you that remember the World Trade Center incident, I was at the World Trade Center as a rescue worker when all of that happened the day of, and I will tell you, it gives you no warning. It just happens. So I can understand that. And for those of you that work in these big buildings, that's something to consider. And you're right. I think for people looking for jobs, it's no longer just about the money. It's about the environment. It's about the experience for people today, especially the younger generation. So it's a great recruiting tool on that front. But I do want to get back on the soapbox of cost, because you're absolutely right. You cannot compare it to traditional stick pricing or regular framing of a building, because, the overall time to complete is much faster. Means heads on beds, right? People are making their money back quicker, especially if it's a commercial project or they're leasing out the space. The other side people don't really talk about is the insurance savings, right? There's less liability because the project is done so much quicker and so much of it is built off site. So when you add all of these things up with workers' comp claims and everything else, it's a number that I'm sure you and your team have been through up and down, back and forward. And I'm sure if people really wanted to understand these benefits, you could help them with it.
Yeah, it's so much simpler in so many ways. And I think the other aspect on the money side, it was all fun and games to take your time on a project when interest rates were at 1%. Right. It's a totally different game when it's now at 4, 5, 6, 7%. This is when you want speed on the construction project, and safety is another matter. I think that you work with cranes, you work with very clear delineated methods of connections. So I think it's an extremely positive way of building the product and keeps workers safe. Again, I've never met anybody that hasn't loved it, working with it, or they said, "Oh, let me just go back to concrete." It's not. It doesn't happen. Right. Once you work with it, you love it.
Yeah, for sure. And the precision of the panels, the CLT panels, how precise are they compared to like traditional lumber? How precise is a CLT panel?
Well, the nice thing about a CLT panel is, and I brought our micro CLT panel, which we still need to talk about. But the great thing is, through that cross lamination, it's just a much more stable, straighter product. I think you can even see it on the camera like that. It doesn't move. It doesn't, this is not plywood that you could bend back and forth. It's a solid, strong product. This is just the micro, but of course, because you're massive, it's a lot easier to maintain its shape. It doesn't move as well. It's just a vastly improved, but it's still wood. So you have to protect it. And I saw one of your sponsors is Sega. So we work so closely with Sega to protect the panel and the job site from water, because wood still absorbs water. So the more you can protect it from water, the better, of course, particularly during construction. So very important that we take care of that. Wood is not perfect, but neither is steel or concrete. So
I love it. All right. So I heard you loud and clear. We still got to get into micro CLT. Yeah. Because I could go down a rabbit hole on all the benefits of what you're doing. So, but let's talk about micro CLT. I know you have another presentation you want to put up. You're going to have to remove the one. I tried removing it on my end. It won't let me. So just remove the one and add the other one.
Yeah.
So, but and while you're doing that and you're loading it up, I'll just keep chatting away here. But for framers out there, it is so precise. People don't even take the time to understand how many times a framer has to turn a piece of wood to see which side the crown's on. And you do that times, tens of thousands of pieces of lumber on a regular traditional built building. Just that alone is hundreds, if not thousands of hours when you're doing construction. So there are so many benefits.
Yeah, we built some bunk beds last week for a charity, and when you do that, it's hard work, So on the construction site.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. All right, I'm going to add the micro CLT presentation here so we can hop into that. Come on now, work with me. There we go.
There we go. So I told you, Dave, I have problems moving the slide forward in the full presentation mode, so we're going to have to stay this way.
Okay.
So micro CLT is the micro gives it away. It's the small CLT. So it's the same principle as cross-laminated timber for macro or large construction. And we didn't know how to call this product because in Europe we call it 3-layer panel, we call it wood panel. But when we went on the construction site in Baltimore, actually, the guys would say, "Hey, you guys got more of that micro CLT? That's really helpful on our site here." So we changed the name to decorative micro CLT. So what is it? It's the same thing, but it's a very big panel. We'll see it in a minute. We call it, it's not plywood. This is what plywood would look like, and this is the micro CLT panel. So it's real wood that's been thin sawn and edge glued, face glued, and cross laminated for additional stability. So it's the thin version of the big one, either in 3 or 5 layer panels, and it comes from 1/2 inch thick all the way to 2 3/8 inch. That's really where real CLT starts. So real CLT thickness starts at about 60 millimeters, 2 3/8 inch. So while it is a structural product, we can't call it that way in the US because we don't have a structural panel, but it's a large panel that you can move with 2 people, or we can cut it down into smaller ones. Comes in a number of different wood species or different treatments like steamed or thermal wood, rough sanded and brushed. So
what's the difference between steam and thermal wood?
Yeah, so steamed wood is actually just giving the product a little bit of a darker color, so it looks a little bit older. Thermal wood is taking the original lumber down to we are basically overcooking it, and with thermal wood, it's now a growing alternative to traditionally resistant wood species such as red cedar and some of these other West Coast species like redwoods. It cooks out the sugars in the fiber in the process, and it allows you to use the wood in exterior applications without a chemical treatment.
Thank you.
It's a relatively new technology, but vastly growing. So here's some surface treatments, including acoustic panels. It stains extremely well. So this is a customer from our DIY business, where we provide a T&G product that can screw straight into the stud, so you can bypass gypsum drywall immediately. You can basically install it like that. It's for most places acceptable from a fire point of view. So we have the US and Canadian testing. And this would be a ceiling installation for a smaller panel that you would just where you would run the electrics behind it. We have it in a number of stores now. It's in a small format in Home Depot in Canada, so it's available there and also online. And we hope that it'll be available in the US at Home Depot and Lowe's as well in the near future. But what you do with it, you can quickly cover walls with a real wooden appeal. Extremely flexible product that you can use in all kinds of applications. This one is actually in New York. Just pointing out, this is the intro building, which was built over a concrete podium. But of course, they didn't want the lessees to walk into the door and see concrete. So the panel, the 12 millimeter panel on the top of the concrete as a suspended ceiling, was a very, very quick way to solve that issue. So just kind of flipping through. this is where we retract. This is some work that we did in Portugal in a large old building that wanted to create some office space within the building using these micro CLT panels. They're incredibly flexible. So now you're not looking at glulam beams here, you're looking at steel beams that have been cladded out with wood because the original owner didn't want to show the steel beam. Just a number of quick applications for this particular product. And I'll flip very, very quickly too. So I think this is, of course, a growing market, is the smaller cabin type of business. But it's also used for millwork, for staircases, and so on. So it's in Europe, people know this as the woodworker panel, and they don't even ask twice. But for us in the US, is quite a new product, also for furniture, cabinetry. So it's catching on. I would say we quote a new project every day, 2 or 3 projects. Quite interesting. Architects specify it. And so do interior designers. So think wood.
Yeah. Listen, so I love this panel, right? Or so structurally speaking, the thicker panel is actually structural?
Yeah, it is a structure. We have the testing from Europe, so we would have to kind of either we are working still with some possible testing methodology companies here in the US to get it structural certified. I think eventually that will be the case. But it does have structural properties. It's the CLT panel, just smaller, thinner.
So, I've been over to Sega, just as a quick shout out to them. I appreciate you mentioning Sega. They are on the cutting edge of, air barriers and especially in the mass timber market. But I will tell you, it was interesting to me in Europe, in Switzerland, anyhow, in Sweden, a lot of times they cover up the mass timber.
Yeah, I think this.
Which, to an American, we're like, it's beautiful. Why would you do that? But that's because it's used everywhere over there, and people want different looks and feels.
If you go to a Moxie hotel in Europe, every Moxie hotel that you will stay at is a mass timber building, but you wouldn't know it unless you start digging into the wall. So it's just completely as a regular building product.
Sure. So for those of you that live up on the Canadian-USA border, it sounds to me like you could cross the bridge of the river there and go to Home Depot and possibly find, some of this product. I think it's gorgeous. I would love to be able to use that as cladding versus, the traditional, sheetrock or gypsum or whatever people want to call it today.
Thanks. Yeah, I agree.
Yep. So walk me through the growth for this micro CLT here in the States. What's the timeline for that, for people maybe to have the opportunity to get it? And as an architect or a designer, I can get it now if I have a project that warrants it.
Yeah, absolutely. We keep inventory in Savannah on our own, not all sizes, of course. And I think this is quite funny. I just got an email, somebody asking for a 3-ply micro CLT. But, we have inventory here in the US. We have inventory on our own. We have some partners that are stocking the inventory now in Baltimore and in Connecticut. And so as we develop more and more projects, we intend to create more distribution channels for the product. But even if you have a small project or a smaller project that doesn't take a full container, I would say the lead time is about 10 to 11 weeks. I think that gives you enough time for your project to plan on it, and we can bring it in just for you in the sizes you want or in the shapes and forms or wood products that you like.
Right. And the beauty of it is it's sustainable, it's versatile, right? It helps with that indoor climate. Maybe your kids will study harder if you put it in your house, right? There's that side of it. But it also is just, you were saying, the ease of installation. It's kind of a tongue and groove. You just hang up there and it looks like one big mass, CLT wall.
Incredibly fast. So, and also if you think about one thing that's extremely popular now is cathedral ceilings. Yeah. If you think about the size of that 5 meter, 16-foot panel by 80 inches wide panel, just very, very fast construction, very complicated, and of course a much better product than solid lumber.
Right.
Finally, to me, I always say, if you don't want to build a mass timber building but you have an old and ugly building, this is one way to spruce it up. So
yeah, well, hey, listen, you got me thinking. I have a studio, and I'm going to be sprucing some things up if I can get my hands on some of that stuff. I love it. Thomas, We're just about at the end of the show here. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you would like to make sure that we do not forget to cover?
The final questions you should always ask, what's the secret of life? Because you never know who might have it. So I would usually ask you that question. Do you know? I don't know. But I think we covered everything. And I really appreciate the time and the opportunity to be on this show.
Well, and I have an answer for your secret of life if you want to hear it.
Yes, of course.
I didn't know this in my earlier years as I was a builder and developer, but now, the Dave Cooper Live is a hobby that went terribly wrong, as I tell people, right? But the secret to life is really loving what you do. And I only hang out with forward-looking people. This show is about who's helping us build better, further, faster, better for our kids. For me personally, I think the secret of life and happiness and what you do is really, truly trying to make a difference that matters. People are in business, but matters for people's health, the environment, our children, your children. I think, having meaning in life's a big deal.
I couldn't add anything more to it, and I always say that when I started in the wood business, we were the enemy of the environmentalists. And it has completely changed now. So that gives me more meaning in the job that I do. Right. But I also know that forests can absorb all the things that we do if we just grow forests. But forests need to be maintained, and that needs to be done by commercial companies. And I think this is where this whole industry is really participating and contributing to the environment.
Yeah, no, I agree. So I'm going to put a couple comments up here real quick just because people are watching. Greg Ugaldi, he's the past chair of the National Association of Home Builders, updates the president of the United States and the Secretary of Housing a couple times a year. Greg, great. Thank you for joining us. The videos are excellent, along with Dave and Thomas proving a very informative narrative. Love it. Thank you for that. We did answer this question. JC said micro CLT sounds like another name for plywood. JC, it's not plywood. So, but if you have more questions on that, please reach out. And I'll just put this last one up here for Jennifer. Love the versatility of the micro CLT from Binderholz. Listen, everybody, this has been a great conversation. Thomas, I hope this helps you guys, kind of get the word out there as well. I think there's going to be a lot of people that are super interested in you. Maybe that email you got earlier was because they were watching the show and they're trying to get on the bandwagon to get their hands on some of this stuff. But for the rest of you out there, if you want to support us, you want to be part of our community, you want to come to some of our private networking events that we host around the world, people like Thomas, CEOs, executives, C-suites are the people that are at our events talking about all these things we're talking about and learning how to do business together. We're just here to be everybody else's voice and let the world know that there are better ways of building out there. Thomas, don't go anywhere. I'll come back to you at the outro. But for the rest of you, guess what? It's Wednesday. You still got 2.5 days to keep building it better. And now you have another tool in the tool thanks to Thomas and Binderholz. Thomas, thanks so much, my friend.
Thank you, Dave.
All right, everybody. Have a great week. We'll see you on Monday. What an amazing show. Thank you to all of our sponsors for helping us to continue to bring all of these innovative conversations to all of you out there. Please visit them, see what they have to offer you. And as always, subscribe to the YouTube channel and ring that bell. It would mean the world to us. I'm Dave Cooper. Thanks for watching.